For Thursday, July 20th, 2023 to order. And can we have a roll call?
President Nancy Marsh.
Here.
Vice President Dan Randall. Here. Director Matthew Clark.
Here.
Director Barbara Dye.
Here.
And Barbara, can you hear us?
Here.
Okay, and Director Jill Grant.
Here.
And I am Delia Camito and also Hope Atmore, the Assistant General Managers. We have Chuck Duffy, our General Manager on Zoom, and our counsel, Bill Parkin, also on Zoom.
Hey, welcome everybody. First, do we have any members of the public who would like to comment on anything that is not
You
on
want to hear this while I'm doing, or just because I'm listening?
I'm sorry, Len, did you want to comment on something that is not on the agenda tonight?
I mean, this is just blah 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 stuff. If it ever gets interesting, I'm still eating.
Len, do you want to comment on the agenda? Can you mute? Somebody mute that.
I don't have control, or else I would, but
We got the comment. Okay, and would anybody else like to comment on anything that is not on tonight's agenda? Don't see any hands up. So I will move forward to agenda item number 1 on Parks and Recreation activities. First item is to report on Granada Community Park and Recreation Center. So I think I am turning over to Barbara and Ray for an update.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to let Ray give a report because there's recently been a meeting of the various teams who are working on getting us ready to submit our proposal to the county for permits. So Ray, if you could give us an update, that'd be great.
I should say Ray, our project manager for the Parks and Recreation project.
Yes.
I think
Thank you.
I hope you've been introduced to the community. So
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Just wanted to give you an update on where we are with the community park and the rec center based on our latest project meeting this week. We have several items that we're working on. The most important one that's on the critical path is the project description for the environmental document for the ISM&D. This project description has to be very exact and very precise on what we're accomplishing both for the rec center and the community park. So we are paying special attention to what we actually include as part of this description that goes into the ISM&D document. So I'll be working with the consultants. This is the environmental consultant, the consultant that does the architectural, the civil consultant, and also the landscape architect. We're pulling all our resources together to come up with a complete project description that not only includes what we are implementing in terms of construction, but what kind of activities will be conducted in both the park and the community center. So we're hoping to have this done by end of the week and transmit a combined document to the environmental consultant by next week. Other activities we're working on, working on grants. We are looking at joining forces with a company called Townsend, which is a PR firm out of Sacramento. And Nancy Marsh was kind enough to direct us in that direction. We got the recommendation from Half Moon Bay city manager. And I worked with Townsend before, so they have obtained grants for us in the past for other projects along Highway 1. So we're hoping that with the combined forces, we can go ahead and apply for some grants. I'm also meeting with the assistant general manager, Hope, next Monday. She has, my understanding, is a lot of experience in grants. So we're gonna pull our forces together to see what we can do and accomplish in this sense. In conjunction with the grants, just as a preparation for that, we're looking at the visual renderings that we currently have for the rec center. We're going to add the visual renderings for the park, combine it with the rec center, and this would be added in as a package for applying for grants. It's going to increase our chances, and it's going to be very, very useful. Other items we're working on are civil engineer BKF is starting the design as support for the preliminary plans that the architectural firm Group 4 is working on. We're working also on undergrounding the poles that are adjacent to the park, and we're meeting with BKF and their sub-consultants to see how we're going to accomplish that. According to our environmental consultant, that we need to include that as part of the ISMND in order to get the clearance for that before we proceed. But that's something that General Manager Chuck Duffy and I will discuss and see how we can approach that in the future.
Can I make, can I make just a quick point that this is something I've been pushing from the very beginning. I know it may be expensive, but I really think we want to have the option of undergrounding that one section. There's only one section of wires that goes along the park. So while we may not be able to afford to do it right away, we need to have it in the project description so that we don't need a special permit if and when we do have the funds or the, grant dollars or whatever to do it. But it would be great to make it happen. Thanks.
Absolutely. That's the plan.
Where are these poles that you're talking about?
I
They
can,
go along Surfers Beach by where the surfers park. It's only that one section that has the poles, and they're not power poles. They are only communication poles. But
yeah, that's the lucky part, that they're not high voltage power bolts, because they're extremely expensive. But still, yeah, we're going to proceed with the environmental clearance for that and include the plan. So the sub-consultant to BKF will be meeting with us the next week or so, and we're going to see how we're going to approach that. Another item that we've been working on is the water requirements for the park and the community center. We want to have potable water, and CCWD provides that water. However, even though this is an essential facility, in the past, CCWD has been very hard to negotiate and expensive to obtain this water from. So I've contacted them, the general manager, and I'm hoping that we could have a conversation going on and find out exactly how much and how long would it be before we can access their facility in terms of supply of water for both the community center and the park. We would have to look at the actual needs of the park itself. We have quite a bit of irrigation requirement currently in the park plans. We have grass areas. We have toilet facilities. The rec center is pretty straightforward. We got the fire sprinkler system and the rec center itself that needs some landscaping. But combined, we're looking at a huge sum, and I'm hoping that we could start the negotiations with them and get that settled. At least open up the route into obtaining the supply.
Does it help at all, Ray, that we have water at the rec center building now?
It helps, but we probably need a bigger line. Right now we have a very small meter there. So because of the fire sprinkler system requirement for the two buildings, we're gonna need a much bigger line. So it's gonna cost quite a bit to access that supply from CCWD. But it does help, of course. As an example, I wanted to kind of bring to your attention the project we just completed down in Highway 1 and South Main Street. It's a new signalized intersection, and we already had a 3/4 inch meter, and we were going to access that for temporary landscape irrigation for 1 year period. We had drought tolerant landscaping in that area. So we only needed to irrigate it for 1 year before they would be on their own. And CCWD did not want us to even go that route. And we tapped onto it. We tried to kind of use the water and ask for forgiveness later. And we thought that since we already have the meter, it's okay for us to use it, but they were not happy about it. And they only were convinced because we only had 1 year period for irrigation requirement, just establishment period. So I talked to our landscape architect, and Chuck and myself and Tom Conroy from Kikuchi, we're going to look at the plan and see exactly what the needs would be, and approach CCWD with the total need and figure out how we can go about that.
Yeah, and Ray, I think Tom did a takeoff on that a year and a half ago or something. It was actually surprisingly low to me because there's a bunch of the stuff that's drought tolerant, and then there's some lawn, So
Perfect.
you may want to ask him that.
Okay. Barbara is.
Go ahead, Barbara,
You got to unmute.
Sorry, I'm in a vacation house with some stuff going on in the background. I just want the community to know that we spent 2 years looking into every possible alternative for using potable water for this project. We looked at water storage, we looked at wells, we looked at a scalping plant off the pump station.
Portola pump station. Yeah.
Portola pump station. We talked to the county about these things. We had our engineers look at it. We really tried every way that it was possible. I mean, not me, but like the team that was working on this plan really did try to find alternative ways to provide the water for this project. And it just seems like none of them work and would provide sufficient water to make this project go. So if we're going to have a park there, it looks like we are going to have to work with CCWD, and hopefully we'll have a productive arrangement with them and be able to make that work. Something to look into, and I'm glad you're on it, Ray. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. So as far as the environmental document, just giving you a background and its status on that one, the biological investigation have been on their way. We expect to have a document within the next month or so on the biological impact. The cultural investigation also has been underway. We had sent in letters to the Native American tribes, to 8 of them that have jurisdiction or background in this area. And we have received some comments back, and most of the comments have been pretty straightforward. One requested interpretive signs as part of the park project. Talking to our landscape architect, they're easy to implement and also increases our chances of obtaining certain funding, grant funding. As far as archaeological, the investigation was done last week on site, so we expect to have a report shortly within the next month or so on that as well. Other issues that I discussed, the visual renderings is up on top of the chart here for us. I want to make sure we get that worked out pretty quickly. And once we have that, I think we get a better idea of how to approach these grants and include that as part of the big package. So be happy to answer any questions.
I know that Tom Conroy and Marty Sauter were communicating with each other about the updated graphic for the big sign that is
Yes.
on the property. Is what's the status of getting that new sign up?
Chuck, do you have any?
No, I haven't.
On that one?
Yeah, Tom Conroy, we had done a bunch of iterations, and Barbara, you had lost your email at that point in time. But I thought it was done. So
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yes, the latest I know is that Tom, Marty, me, and Chuck have all signed off on the version. It's just going to print, and it should be up fairly soon.
Great.
and other than that, I'll just add Tom Conroy also. I don't know if you saw this, Ray. He did a pretty extensive, I won't say a rewrite, but a writing of the project description. So I think we're ready to go on that. I reviewed it today and it looks good to me. It's very comprehensive. And Bill Park, and I'll send that to you. So, you get an early look at it.
Okay. I'm just waiting for BKF on the civil side, make sure that they include any civil impacts into that project description. So I think that will be then.
It needs to go to the RCD as well for review. And I sent the contact information to Ray.
Yes, you did.
So.
Go ahead and do that.
Any further questions from or comments from the board on Parks and Rec Center before I go to public?
I'll just say it's exciting to see things getting
Yeah.
done. I'm
Let's
great. I'm
just
glad
say,
you're on board.
We're all
I'm
glad
so
we
glad you're on
hired
board.
Ray,
Yes.
okay? Collectively.
Well,
Took
thank
a
you for your
load off
comment.
my plate on
Okay, I got it. I don't see any other hands up from the board. Let me just open up to public for any public comments or questions. Go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment on the Park and Recreation Center project. Don't see any hands. And so we will go on to the next item, item B, under Parks and Recreation, which is consideration of summer recreation programs. And Barbara, I know you have a proposal and I have one addition to your proposal.
All right, well, I can just, my thinking was we could put together some walks for the summer to have a recreation program. I really wanted to make it part of a GCSD thing, so I haven't done the first 2 walks. It seems like there's a lot on our plate right now, and maybe we should gear this for the fall, is where I'm sort of coming from. But I put out a call on Nextdoor for other people to maybe lead some walks. I think that could be something positive. We don't need a big crowd, but if we could get some people to come out, I mean, I'm happy to do a history walk and a nature walk. And I'm sure there are other people in this community who have interesting walks they could do. So I'd like to see us try to do something, but I'm willing to be patient until our staff situation sort of stabilizes with our, and that we can put it together in a real program. So I'm flexible on this.
Well, these walks in the past have attracted anywhere between 10 and I think our last history walk was 32 people that we split together in 2 groups. They really just need publicizing on our GCSD's Nextdoor feed or maybe a poster. But I think at this time, let's get through our transition. I agree with you, and maybe we can do some dates in late August and September. Pat Tierney has also volunteered to do something he did a few years ago, I think, pre-pandemic, which is to work with BORP, which does bicycle outings using ADA modified bicycles for kids with special abilities. It may cost about $300, which is well within staff's limits to pay for. So I don't think it needs board approval. I just wanted to add that on, and I didn't see any problem with him going forward with that. All he really needs is the funding and help with promoting it, and he will do all the work with BORP to set it up. Now that we have the trail on the east side, right next to the elementary school parking lot, because he worked with the special education staff at the elementary school to identify and recruit kids who did have an absolute blast on these. The creative modifications on the bicycles were really fun to see. And he had, maybe 10 or 12 kids who had a lovely afternoon. So that also is a wonderful thing to do. So I don't think we need to bring these for approval. I think it's just, well, we'll let our staff transition, and then the hope we'll follow up on what we'd like to do. And it really is mostly help promoting it in the district.
And I'd like to invite community members who might have something they want to share.
Yeah, that's
To make proposals. I talked to the people in the new children's clothing, secondhand clothing place, in downtown Half Moon Bay. And they're doing programs for kids. Maybe we could incorporate those, and they have a space for it. So maybe we could incorporate some of their ideas in there too. I think there's some possibilities, but I don't want to try to insist now when we have changes going on. So
great ideas. Any other questions or comments on recreation updates? Any questions or comments from the public on potential recreation? Didn't see any hands, so We will move forward to agenda item number 2, which is the report on the assessment district. I believe this is a memo for information only, but not for action this evening.
That's correct. There's no action needed from the board. This item was requested at the last meeting by Director Dye. And, you know, the timing is such that the bonds were just paid off in September. So the assessment district is kind of transitioning into its second phase. It's an integrated financing district. So now that the bonds have been paid off, it will continue. Actually, Hope and I had a conversation with our new bond counsel today, and he's with us. So I'd like to introduce Cameron Weiss. I feel very fortunate to have found him. I think he's been signed up with us since before, just right at the beginning of the pandemic. But of course, you know, we've had these stretches of time and waited for the bonds to get paid off. But we're really at a point now where we need to move forward with how it's going to work from this time going forward. And so what I did was I provided some background information for those of you who are not that familiar with the assessment district, which was formed in 1994 for the purpose of paying for the district's portion of the treatment plant expansion. And let's see here. So I explained a little bit about the sources of income, and the key here is that the main source of income, which comes from the issuance of sewer permits, is intended to fully be sufficient to reimburse the people who paid the assessments up front to go into the actual costs. So we are in transition to where the bonds are paid off, and we're going to be paying we still collect those funds, but they're going to be used to pay back the original assessments, which we call non-contingent assessments. So we have approximately $1 million sitting in the account right now. We had 10 original accounts. We've canceled those. We've consolidated down to 4 that we need. They're all still with US Bank. And going forward, the board will in the future be seeing some things come before them for some decisions, which Cameron and Hope and I discussed earlier today and confirmed that there needs to be some procedures or protocols established and approved by the board for how, you know, everything is processed in terms of where the money is deposited and what it's utilized for. And, you know, we still have assessment reliefs available and that kind of thing, and how we're going to be actually doing the reimbursements to the parcel owners. One of the important things that will need to be determined is the balance threshold that will trigger when we make the reimbursements. So in other words, we have to determine what amount, how much do we want to collect before we start issuing refund checks. And then there needs to be a well, the board should, in the past, you have approved a budget, but that budget included the actual assessment that went on the tax roll. And we no longer have that part of the budget, but there should still be a budget that is adopted by the board that allocates amount of money for the ongoing expenses, which is basically for administration, legal, I can't think, and the US Bank trust fees, which are very minimal now that we've reduced it down to 4 accounts. And for overhead, there needs to be some kind of procedure laid out for how we determine the overhead to be the district is allowed to be reimbursed for the costs of operating the assessment district. That includes, you know, utilities and you know, all of our business machines and so forth. So in the past, I've basically done that myself. Bond counsel said that we are completely entitled to that, you know, as long as it's reasonable. I was using 5 or 10% of our overhead costs that we were reimbursing the district. I know that our general manager had budgeted overhead this year, so maybe, I don't know, Cameron, can we adopt a budget after the fact? Should we do one for this year, I guess is my only question. And then Cameron has also agreed to write the initial drafts of some of these procedures. They're going to be very similar to what we've had in the past, just pared down to the accounts we have now. And they will come before the board in the future, so near future. Is there anything else, Cameron, that I left out? Can you hear us? Are you there, Cameron? Okay, hi.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, that I think you covered it very well. But just to answer your question on the budget, there's nothing in the law that for assessment law in terms of this integrated financing district that would preclude you from establishing a budget after the fact, because when you had the bonds outstanding, you were looking at bond years, budgeting to make sure that you hit the cycle of payments to the bondholders. You really don't have that now. Now yours is a reimbursement formula. As you said, the board would need to set up some protocols, procedures and protocols for the future. But so there's no legal requirement or anything that would preclude you from establishing a budget at this point in time.
Great.
If you so choose. Yeah.
First of all, I found this memo very helpful. I had
Thank
a
you.
briefing a while back on the assessment district, and I have sort of a tenuous understanding of it, but I found the memo really helpful. Just to test my tenuous understanding. Will we continue to collect contingent assessments on new sewer hookups?
Yes.
So that will continue to fund
Yes.
that fund. And the reimbursements, do those go only to those original 1,600 or so parcels that had a non-contingent assessment?
Yes.
So ultimately, the new buildings since then, the new sewer hookups will pay back the initial funding that was assessed to
That's
those.
correct. But my understanding, it means that also the people who have to buy, that are developing now that have to buy non-contingent assessments will also be reimbursed. So
So if an undeveloped parcel that was a non-contingent.
that was not originally assessed. So for instance, if you have an assessment and you are building a house, you basically pay $13,000 for a sewer permit. But if you have to buy an assessment, others have already paid it either over the 25-year life of the bond, or they prepaid it in the beginning. Those people have to still buy a non-contingent assessment because
From the original non-consistent
yes,
assessment.
and that's an additional $9,000. So it's, but that would also, that non-contingent assessment, from my understanding, Cameron, is that will also be paid back. So it's
Simply because it was originally a non-consistent.
yes,
contingent
it's
assessment
a
parcel.
non-contingent assessment. Yes.
Well, I feel pretty good. Yes, okay.
Yes, it's a very complex assessment district that was set up. It's very unique. I think, Cameron, you're the one that said he's never actually seen one of these in place. Lucky us, but fortunately, we have Cameron going forward. He actually worked with or is familiar with Jerry Laster, the bond counsel we had who set this up initially. And so he has a very good understanding of what we have. And I'm very thankful to have him to help us moving forward. He did mention that he thought some of my history and knowledge might be helpful in the future, and that we might want to work out, Chuck and I could possibly work out something where, if I'm needed on an hourly basis or something like that. It wasn't what I intended to do after I left, but with the complication, there's some things that could take a little bit of time. So it's, I told Hope she can call me anytime she has a quick question, but if it's going to be involved, then, we might have to work something.
Okay.
They made a couple movies about this. It's like The Never Ending Story or Catch 22. But I do want to take the time seriously to thank Delia for this. She has a deep understanding of the assessment district and the integrated financing district, and she's almost earned her law degree figuring this stuff out. So I appreciate that, Delia. So
Thank you. The timing could have been more perfect because I started right after the first year it went on the tax roll. And then, of course, the last bond payment was made in September. And so my timing could have been more perfect.
Even the assessment district,
Yes,
I'll remember.
yes. Yes.
Are there other questions or comments from the board, Matthew?
How do property owners or potential property owners find out what the status is on their parcel if they're thinking of building or selling or buying?
You know, that's a good question because there are people who have been around long enough, you know, that own more, you know, multiple parcels that are familiar with our assessment district. But a lot of times these, you know, get bought and sold and then people don't know. And I haven't had any calls actually recently at all about the assessment district, and people aren't expecting to get refunded, I don't think. You know, people that have, like I said, people have been here long enough, know, but they aren't really, I don't know if they're expecting it. And the thing is that the way the bond documents were written is that it's the then owner that will receive the reimbursement, not the ones who actually might have, you know, paid it originally.
Current owner.
Yeah, so it might be a great surprise. You know,
they'll just get a check in the mail.
yes. Yeah, it'll be a really nice surprise. I mean, ideally, someone could, you know, it adds value to their, I don't know, you know.
Would that be a one lump sum check?
No, and that's the problem. And the threshold that needs to be set will establish how many checks we're going to be sending out. And we don't know exactly how long it will take. You know, because you can't guarantee how many permits we're going to, you know, issue in any given year. And we have a couple of big projects landing out there. You know, we can meet a threshold quickly, but otherwise, you know, development has really slowed around here. And so it could take a long time to hit a threshold, but the higher we set the threshold, the better, I think, because, you know, I'd rather pay off these non-contingent assessments and, you know, with a lower number of checks going out than a high number of small checks going out. So, you know, we'd like to minimize the work involved in that. And we'll probably have to hire an administrator or use our current administrator to do that for us, to send out checks.
Okay.
And that's kind of the problem with the assessment district. I did a deep dive into it, I don't know what, 5 years ago. I think I implored Cameron to find a way to end it quickly, and he wouldn't do it. But it's, you know, we'll collect $60,000 a year. We'll have $35,000 a year in fees. And so you'll be sending people checks, like Delia says, for, you know, $27 or something. So that's the nature of the documents that Jerry put together.
Barbara, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Sorry,
There.
I meant to take down my hand. Sorry. So when they did this bond, everybody who lived in El Granada at that time had to pay. And then, no?
No,
No, only the undeveloped
yeah,
properties.
or the ones that were not yet connected to the system.
Mhm.
Their contributions paid off the bonds over all these years. Right?
Sorry, what was
Their
Well, yes, all the people in the assessment district paid something like $400 a year, 1,350 parcels, and they paid $400 a year, and that paid off the principal and interest for the bonds.
And the new money coming in is just from new connections and new people, or are there still going to be people paying on this?
No, that's
Well,
done. And don't let me step on your thunder here. You go ahead, because you know it better than I do.
So the non-contingent assessment, and I know these names are, which I call the NCA, and I did make a slight typo in the memo. There's it says NCS and it should have said NCA, but the non-contingents were those assessments were placed on the parcels that would benefit from the treatment plant expansion. So mostly undeveloped parcels, and that money was collected over 25 years or in the prepayment period. And that is what paid off the bonds over this time period. So whether you developed or not, the vacant parcels paid that. And that's what's getting reimbursed through the contingent assessment. Now we have collected contingent assessments since we had new capacity. So when the treatment plant expansion went online, like I said, that was in February of 2000. If you look at our permit log, everybody that developed from that point forward paid a contingent assessment. So we have been collecting that for quite some time. It is a set dollar amount of $8,371.36 per equivalent residential unit. So of sewer capacity. So we have been collecting that since February of 2000, and we will continue to collect that. And one of the interesting things that Cameron pointed out is that, and the reason why he couldn't comply with what Chuck wanted to do, which is to just let this thing go away, is because it was, Cameron mentioned, it was very clear throughout the documents, and this was, you know, how Jerry wrote it, is that the contingent assessments were intended to fully repay everybody who paid the non-contingent assessment. And we just can't get out from around that. That was how it was written. So we will continue to collect contingent assessments, and we will still sell the extra non-contingent assessments that we have, and we will still be buying back the ones that aren't needed on parcels that have developed and were over assessed. And in the meantime, you know, we're just, once we hit certain thresholds that will be set by your board, we'll start issuing refund checks.
And Delia, big picture, what were the bonds issued? 5.5 million, something like that? I can't remember.
It was 8 million one originally.
Okay, so it was $8 million, and again, real world numbers, we connect what, 10 parcels a year?
Sometimes
Probably. I know, sometimes more if you get a big project, but yeah, so that's why I say it's a never ending story. We're trying to pay back $8 million, you know, $50,000 a year at a time. So,
But we did it. We paid it back.
no, that was the actual bond
to the
payments.
people.
Yeah,
Not-
we're talking.
Sorry.
Reimbursement. Yeah, the bonds are paid off. The reimbursement almost goes in perpetuity, because every time one of those lots that originally was one of the original non-contingent assessment lots, every time that turns over, you've basically done a new sale of a non-contingent lot that is now eligible for reimbursement, if I understood. It's only one time.
You kind of lost me on that. If there wasn't a lot that still has development potential that was never assessed, they're the only ones that have to buy the assessment, and that's fairly rare. If it's a project that ends up being bigger, then they have assessments, you know, on the parcel. Like for instance, the RV park, they had like, you know, one, I think, assessment. They had to buy the rest of them.
Got it.
Yeah, those would be added into the.
But every time
Yeah.
somebody buys a new
No,
contingent assessment, it adds to the number of
Right. Well,
contingent
the-
assessments to be
yes,
reimbursed.
the district originally held some non-contingent assessments that were available to sell to those who needed it.
Got it.
But the thing is that the way the numbers were calculated was so that we would not attain the goal of payback until we reach build out. And the interesting thing is, Hope and I today were talking about this after we got off the phone with Cameron, and we took our GIS database and figured out how many parcels were not yet hooked up, and because she thought there weren't very many parcels, not vacant parcels still, and I think, you know, there's a lot more than you realize out there. And I forget how many we counted up, but we took the $8,371, divided it or multiplied it, and it actually came out to exactly $9 million. So the numbers are spot on in terms of, you know, how it was calculated. And that is really interesting to me, how Jerry was able to do that. So, but until every single lot is built within our district is the point at which everybody will be paid back. And until then, it's not the case.
And so this is in perpetuity, like you said.
Yes.
This will go on forever until maybe Cameron retires, I retire, and Bill retires. So.
Well, we are.
Like a first out repayment, like how do you determine the order of repayment reimbursement?
We would do it evenly to the.
Oh, so just peanut butter
Yes,
across
yes,
everyone outstanding
yes,
versus
yeah.
like make one person whole and then the next person
No,
the next
yeah, you
person.
can't do it that way. You just can't do it that way.
Wow.
There is, though, going to be some variations of how much people are due, because if they paid it during the prepayment period, they didn't have all, you know, they'll get a lower amount. I don't know. We have to determine, some of the determinations has to be, you know, what exactly is going to be reimbursed is interest reimbursable? I think it is. The fees, I don't believe are, but the interest is what, you know, if they did it over 25 years, they're gonna get more money back because they pay more into it.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop asking questions. Barbara, your hand is.
Yes,
is up.
yes, I just said one thing. So the point of this was that they wanted to expand this sewer plant to handle more development, and they wanted the new development to pay for it. And this is a complicated financial structure to make that happen. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a good assessment of it. Yeah. Yeah, the people who are already hooked up did not have to pay for it.
But they benefit from it.
No, the people who are already on the sewer
Oh, they
system.
don't. It's
No,
only-
no, because they were on old capacity.
Existing.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Well, it makes sense.
yeah. So, anyways, that's, so Cameron will, and Hope and I will be working, and Chuck will be working to bring these issues before the board in the near future and hopefully make some determinations on the threshold and the procedures and, you know, the board will have the final ability to approve those, and then we'll be set, and I think Hope will be able to go forward at that point without me. So, you know, it should be pretty straightforward, I think, from here on in. If we get the procedures established, it's going to be a little bit of work, but you know, it's doable. So, okay.
Will
Any,
people be seeing a difference in their tax bills?
Well, there are no tax roll assessments. It's the bonds are paid off, so
Right.
there is nothing coming. If you know, yes, they have lower taxes if they were assessed.
I used to have an assessment, now I won't have,
Yeah,
now I don't have. an
yeah.
assessment.
Right.
Yeah, so they were paying $400 a year. I don't like to call it tax. It's not a tax, it's an assessment, and now they won't have to pay that.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's nothing on the tax roll this year for that, or going forward. Yeah. So.
Anything that appears in the county taxes, people, that's taxes.
Right.
So-
It's interesting because we are still getting a little bit of bond money trickling in, and I thought we were on heater, so it's kind of confusing. I don't know, maybe we are still getting some late payments, you know, people who are past due or something. I don't know, but I think we just got a $4,000, but we would expect not to get any more county checks because at some point they're going to be done.
And I can't remember, maybe Cameron, you know this, does the assessment district qualify for the teeter plan? I can't remember. that
Not
one.
typically. The counties usually exempt
Really?
Mello-Roos and assessment districts from
Yeah.
the teeter. Yeah.
That's why it'll continue to trickle in on these delinquent parcels then.
Right, right.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's it. Unless-
Anything further from the board on this item? No. Any questions or comments from the public on the assessment district? Seeing no hands up, I'm gonna move on to item 3.
Thank
which
you,
is-
Cameron.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you. We look forward to seeing the proposal come back. Item 3, approval of the audited district financial statements for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. I will say on this one, I did give the auditor who I spoke to today a correction just on page 2. The board of directors,
Thank you.
as of June 30th, 2022, actually had the current board of directors, which I pulled from the website, but there will be a correction on that page. But opening up to the board, I just noted that the financial statements were deemed to be presented fairly in all material effects. That our net position increased year on year, 21-22 or 2021 versus 21-22. The auditor did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls that they would consider to be material weaknesses. And the results of the test disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters required to be reported. And so that was just, you know, proving that I actually read some of it. But any comments or questions from the board? Barbara, I see your hand.
Just a couple questions. Yes, I agree with you that it was a very good audit, and it was nice to see that they saw no material weaknesses. So this is great. I guess we don't have anyone here to answer specific questions, but I was curious if anyone knows on page 6, what the 121,339 from investment in sewer authority mid-coast side was. We don't really get revenue from this sewer authority, so what was
And
that?
this is a new auditor, and he had some, I'm gonna say, strange questions that I didn't really understand, because, you know, we send $500,000 a year for the infrastructure at SAM, and that's carried on their books. So it's not an asset of the district, except for the fact that, you know, we own 20 or 30% of the SAM plant. So I didn't understand that, and he had a whole bunch of questions that I thought I answered, but because, yeah.
You told me the
Where
only.
are you on page 6, Barbara?
Page 6 of the audit, not
Yeah,
page
right.
6 of the
I'm looking.
package.
Yeah, what paragraph? Where are you?
It's at the bottom of the page.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, I've obviously used a lot of auditors over the years. We probably used 10 or 12 different ones, and even this one, you know, they had, I don't know what page it's on, but they have current assets. It's on page 8 of the audit itself, 29 of the packet. And they have restricted assets, and depending on what auditor you talk to, we either have no restricted assets or they've done this. And I hate to say this, but I understand this stuff pretty well, but generally, if you talk to an auditor, restricted assets are funds you've pledged for a bank loan. So we have restricted assets down here for my solar project. And, you know, you've pledged $135,000 a year to pay back that loan, but we don't have anything like that. So.
Actually, Chuck, I spoke with the auditor about that, and he said that with the new guidelines for CalPERS, it has to do with our retirement plan. And he did mention that there were some new guidelines that they previously, where there were some funds that were previously unrestricted, which they have to now report as restricted. So I believe it
$1 million.
Oh, I don't know. It may, I don't know. But I do recall having a conversation with him about that. Our auditor did offer to be here at the meeting, and I'm not sure why we didn't take him up on that. Possibly, I think he could be a little bit more clear, but I do recall having a conversation with him about that.
He did not, he mentioned to
I
me.
told Hope we didn't need him. It's my fault.
He interviewed me today for the usual questions on, do you know of any fraud or things, but he said the only, in his view, material change was that the bond related to the assessment district, that fund, he's designated as a restricted.
That's what it was.
Fund.
Yes, it was. I'm
because
sorry.
we can't do anything with that except pay it back.
That's correct.
So it's restricted and can't be used.
That
for
is
anything
correct.
else.
So it is assessment district related. I apologize. I couldn't, I knew it was something, but yeah. We may have talked about the CalPERS as well, but yes, she's correct. So the restricted funds are probably associated with the assessment district. He said something about them previously being separate, and now they had to be combined and shown as restricted.
Oh, then that is new. Yeah, because that's not an asset of the district.
Yeah, that's it.
It's
Can we
a
just
fiduciary.
do a follow-up on Barbara's question and just on that line, 121,000.
Sure.
Investment in sewer or 30 side. Just what specifically does that refer to?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And then I had one more question. Where'd it go? What was the prior period adjustment of 118,539 about?
Wait, we lost the Zoom. Sir?
Oh, no.
Hello? Sir? Wait, we lost the Zoom.
Hello, for me?
Like a black screen. I see Barbara still. It's just, oh, maybe this computer went.
Yeah, we still have Zoom here.
Am I here?
I do. Okay.
Hold on, Barbara.
Hello?
We're getting back on. I think the computer up there, the main computer went down. So just give us 1 second, please.
Everything looks the same to me, and I can hear everybody. And I can see everyone.
Oh, yeah, the meeting room is frozen.
Oh, yeah, Hope, I saw Hope briefly, but she's on a separate feed.
There we
There
go.
we go. They're moving.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, double check that, hope that your sound is.
And Jen, you can't blame this on me, so.
Right, I can't. The computer just went down for a second.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Okay.
Just want to mention that this is a little late, partially because we had some staffing issues at the end of last year. And we have actually scheduled the next audit starting in October of this year. So we'll be ahead of time as opposed to behind the time. So that's already been scheduled. I just want you to know that.
And we have a new auditor at SAM, who hopefully will be able to, seems very eager and interested to get started on work right away, and will be able to produce a SAM audit, because I know the GCSD audit can't really be finalized until the SAM audit is done. And therefore, you know, so that'll be really good if we get the SAM audit. But my question was about this prior period adjustment of $118,000. I was just curious what that was. Doesn't have to be answered tonight. Just let me know. It's no big deal.
Okay. We'll look that up.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Opening up for public comment. I think only have a couple members of the public left on, but any questions or comments from members of the public on the audit? Seeing none, we do have a resolution, right, Delia?
Actually, we just need approval.
We need a motion.
Oh, we just need a motion to.
I'll move approval of the audited district financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022.
We have a second? Second. Okay, Clark and Randall. Do we have a roll call?
Oh, yes, President Marsh,
Aye.
Director Matthew Clark,
Aye.
Director Jen Randall,
Yeah.
Director Barbara Dye,
Aye.
and Director Jill Grant.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. So we'll move on to item number 4. There's a public hearing considering of a resolution adopting the sewer service charge report and delinquent garbage account report, and authorizing the collection of said charges on the fiscal year 2023-24 San Mateo County tax roll. Any questions or comments from the board on this item?
And for the new board, for the new board members, we place our sewer service charges on the county tax roll just as a matter of convenience. It's just a cheaper and easier way to bill our ratepayers.
I'd just like to mention that we duly published a notice for this public hearing for 2 weeks as required, and we have had no written protests or comments regarding the sewer service charges.
I did note it. I did see it in the paper. Okay, no, I'm seeing no questions from the board. I'm opening public hearing for public comment on this item.
Actually, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Director Grant.
Okay, so what happens after it goes on their taxes? What happens if it's not paid?
I'll explain the teeter plan.
So that's the
Yeah.
that's the teeter plan. So basically the county of San Mateo has a rule that says if as a district, whether it's a water district, sewer district, whatever, we place something on the county tax rolls, we're guaranteed to collect that. So if we put $2 million in sewer service charges, they will pay us $2 million. If there's people who are delinquent, the county will chase them down and they'll assess, late fees and penalties and all that kind of stuff. But that's their business. It's just, it makes our cash flow a lot easier because before the teeter plan, you might have 5% delinquencies, and then you had to chase them down. The district had to chase them down.
And when do we receive that money?
It comes
From
in it comes in 12 payments, and it's basically when you all pay your tax bills. So we get some stuff trickling in, and then we get a big check in December, and then we get a big check in April,
Okay.
May. Yeah.
Okay.
For
Thank
the
you.
second installment.
Yeah, but it's a a no bad debt system for us.
Right. Yeah,
No
and we
bill-
just miss out on penalties, which we'd spend more money chasing.
And sending out individual bills.
Right. Well, that especially, yes.
Yeah, and thankfully, Hope got to see how I do this year after year. There are some little tricky things about the commercial customers because those are based on use volumes. So I think she's gonna do a good job next year based on what she saw this year. It's helpful. So.
Great. I always find those really interesting for commercial.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, then seeing no more questions from the board, I'm opening the public hearing and public comment. Would any members of the public like to comment on this item? Seeing no hands up, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask if we have a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Barbara Dine moves, second from Director Clark. Roll call, please.
Okay, President Nancy Marsh,
Yes.
Vice President Jen Randall,
Yes.
Director Matthew Clark,
Aye.
Director Barbara Dye,
Yes.
and Director Jill Grant.
Yes.
Okay, 5-0 passes.
Okay. Moving on, item 5, approval of sewer authority Midcoast side revised fiscal year 2023-2024 general budget. Revised at the June 26th SAM meeting and related resolution. The board previously approved the SAM budget at our June 15th regular meeting. At the GCSD and MWSD approved that budget. Half Moon Bay City did not approve that budget. And SAM debated, discussed, and came back with a revised budget on their June 26th meeting. Barbara or Matthew, you want to summarize the sort of 2 or 3 significant changes?
I'd be happy to take this, Matthew.
Okay, yeah, there really weren't any significant changes from the previous one that had been.
So, as you may know, Half Moon Bay refused to approve a budget that included funding for repair of the Montera force main. So that left us without a budget, which meant Sam couldn't operate, and that was not a good thing. So we came up with a compromise, which says that this budget includes the first piece of the repair of the Montero force main, which is the preliminary work for a design for the repair, which had already been approved at a SAM meeting. So Half Moon Bay had already supported that. So that's in there. And then Sam came up with 2 kind of emergency items, which they need a new generator for $1 million, and they need the boilers replaced. Well, they wanted to rehabilitate one and replace the other, but it turned out that the cost of replacing both and getting new was just about the same. So the board said, do that. And that the boilers were in a state of violation. So Sam would have been fined if they had not, if they don't take action to replace these boilers. So there had been a push to include additional funding for the Montero force main repair, which Half Moon Bay doesn't want to pay for. So the compromise was that we would pay for the boilers and the generator and the pre-approved engineering work. And then there will be a reevaluation of the budget at mid-year or when a judgment is made by the courts. Now, just to remind everybody that Half Moon Bay claims they don't have to pay for the Montero Mountain repair because they say it doesn't benefit Half Moon Bay, which we're not going to go into now, but is, and let's not forget that the
You're
first
wrong.
court said El Granada, Montero, you're totally right. We're going to issue summary judgment, and Half Moon Bay is wrong. The other factor that Half Moon Bay doesn't seem to pay any attention to is the ERF lawsuit, which was an agreement that was made by Sam and signed by the general manager that we would replace the Montero force main by June 24th, 2024. And that applies to Half Moon Bay as well as us and Montero. The interesting wrinkle in all this is that it is very unlikely that Sam will be in a position to spend significant funds on repairing the Montero force main before the end of this year. Probably early next year is the beginning of it. So this kind of works out well for, first of all, it gets a Sam budget, so they can continue to process the wastewater and we aren't in a huge mess. And second of all, it means that we don't have to give Sam significant funds for work that wouldn't be done until the next fiscal year for the Montero force main, or potentially until the next year. So we need to do this. We need to approve this budget. And then on Monday, Sam will approve, because Half Moon Bay and Montero have already approved it, will approve, all three agencies have to approve it first, and then Sam approved it. And then Sam can issue official invoices to all of the three agencies so that we would pay. So they're not getting any money in July because they don't have the legal authority to issue official invoices to get paid. Now, in the warrants tonight is the invoice for July, which technically we shouldn't pay until next Tuesday after Sam approves this revised budget, but they need that money to operate. And so if we can approve tonight to write that check next Tuesday, that works out really well. So in a way, we're pandering to Half Moon Bay's illogical insistence that they don't have to pay for the Montero force main, but it's an okay resolution. It helps Sam keep going. And I think it's actually not a bad situation for us in terms of our cash flow and the actual needs that Sam will have. Does that make sense? I hope I explained that well.
So the agreement is that the budget will be reviewed either at mid-year or at the adjudication of the Half Moon Bay lawsuit, whichever comes first.
Correct.
And assuming that the lawsuit comes out where it did on the first judgment, basically they'll be on the hook whenever the Montero force main is in the budget. They will be on the hook for their share of that as per the JPA.
Correct. And at that point, we probably will have to come up with some money for the bid, just the bid package for the next set of engineering decisions. But at least this gets the preliminary work continue and gets us going on that. But the other things to keep in mind is, even if the lawsuit, which I don't think will happen, Bill, I have confidence in our lawyers, that we will win the appeal. They are also bound by the ERF settlement to do the Montero force main.
And I was going to make that clarification that it's not per the JPA, it's per that ERF, not the ERF consent decree signed by a judge. And if I could keep going, Barbara.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I told the managers when we had a meeting on this, a month ago or whatever, I said, we Granada will keep paying Sam's O&M bills because they can't turn the lights off. It's a sewer treatment plant. So I may not have that power to do that, but I said it anyway, because we need to fund the treatment plant, obviously.
So this is a good resolution of a current problem. It's not a permanent solution at all, but for right now, it's a pretty good result. And we should vote yes on this tonight.
That's the recommendation from our SAM board members.
Yes.
Does it not seem that we saw the schedule for the next court sessions. And so the mid fiscal year, which would be January, reconsideration of this is going to be a big nothing because the lawsuit probably will not be settled by then.
No, it will be. Bill, can you speak to that? Because I asked that question and I got a good response from Bill.
Bill, do you want to comment on that timing, February
Yeah.
versus?
Sure. It looks like oral argument is probably going to be in October. The Court of Appeal has 90 days in which to render an opinion. So you can do that math. And the reality is the February date is simply the Superior Court has been setting these status conferences, even though the Court of Appeal has assumed jurisdiction. But the Superior Court has been setting status conferences, and the February date is simply a status conference before the Superior Court. So we will have an opinion. Is a very good chance we'll have an opinion by January, and we'll know which way the lawsuit's going, one way or the other.
And the legal stuff aside, in the real world, I think Barbara or Matthew pointed this out, how fast we can spend the money. You know, it's July going into August now. SRT won't be done with their pre-design report, which is that $220,000 budget item, until August, September, October. So we're looking at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It's not an effectively won't be a problem, I guess.
So when that is decided, can they just appeal it to a higher court?
So, very good question. They could petition for review to the state Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court doesn't take many cases. This opinion is likely to be unpublished, meaning it's not in the official reporters and the official reports. So the reality then, if it's unpublished, it's even less likely to be reviewed, to be accepted. I think, however this turns out, this is going to be the end of the road.
What the appeal court decides
Yeah,
will be
that's
the end of the road. Yeah.
That's right. And, if the judgment was reversed, there'll be some direction at that point. We don't know what that'll be, but yeah, if the judgment is affirmed, there's really not much left.
And
So-
they're still
So
bound by the TRF.
theoretically, they could go to the Supreme Court, but this is not that kind of case in my view.
Any further questions, comments from the board? Go ahead.
I have a few questions. Is that okay, Nancy?
Yes, go ahead.
So during the Montera meeting, Sid Young voted yes under protest. Can you explain what that means to vote yes under protest? Because at the SAM meeting, there was a conversation about, well, why don't you just vote under protest? So can you explain that term legally?
Well, in terms of the JPA, it has no meaning whatsoever. I mean, it just doesn't mean anything, frankly. It's like,
Why are they doing it?
It's a good question. It's a very good question. It's sort of like saying, I'm gonna pay my PG&E bill, but I'm paying this under protest, right?
Okay.
What does it really mean?
Okay, thank you.
Could there be something in the MWSC code or bylaws that addresses paying under protest?
Well, there could be, but the question here is the JPA, right? In approvals of budgets and payments by member agencies. So there's not.
It doesn't matter what their bylaws are. The SAM JPA governs it.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, we could say whatever we want, but we made an agreement with 2 other agencies to form a JPA. So it's the JPA that controls. Thanks.
What federal funds were received for the 1976 JPA? Because that's also a topic that's coming up.
There were a number of grants, or there was a clean water grant that was received. I think it funded, Chuck, you could correct me, I think it funded like 89%.
Yeah, it did.
Of the SAM's infrastructure. So it's pretty sizable chunk.
And that infrastructure included the intertie pipeline, which includes the Montara Force Main.
Correct.
And then the Ecological Rights Foundation, the federal lawsuit, I'm not familiar with that. Can you, I know a little bit of, I've read up on it a little bit, but can you just explain it real quick and then say by voting yes today, that won't affect our agreement with them?
So I would prefer that we talk about that offline, and I'm happy to have that discussion with you. But what you do today will not affect that lawsuit. And so.
And I can give you a little bit of broad background unless Bill tackles me here. So, so we had Sam, I keep saying Sam had a big spill in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
ERF sued Sam, they got the consent decree, and that consent decree had 3 pieces to it. You know, replace Montara, replace the last section of the Granada Force Main, and look at the assessment of the Princeton pump station. So that's all public knowledge, and so, but that's the broad basis of that.
And is there a date when that has to be completed?
Yeah, that's the June, the Montara Force. So they've completed the other 3 parts of that consent decree. The Montara Force Main was supposed to have been completed by June 2024.
But there's discussions to extend that deadline. And can someone send Jill the document?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's literally 3 sentences, I think. So there's a lot of verbiage, you know, around it, but there's 3 constructive sentences.
Okay. I would like to thank Barbara for a very excellent explanation of this complicated subject. You explained it very well. I was confused before the meeting, but I'm also a little uncomfortable with how they worded it, that they'll, I'd like to see the words up on the screen, but they said something like they'll consider it or will reconsider it. That doesn't really have any weight at all to me, because, you know, I could reconsider dyeing my hair black. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, you know?
Well, are you talking about the actual SAM action?
Correct.
Yeah, so you know, Barb was in the meeting, obviously. This was Matthew. I watched it on YouTube or whatever, PCTV, sorry, PCTV. And I kind of thought the same thing, right? You say, we'll reconsider it. It was just a negotiated thing, and it doesn't mean anything. You could not reconsider it, or you could, whether you took action or not. So I agree with your point. It's kind of a,
I was going to say maybe we should put more teeth to it, but based on Barbara's explanation, it seems like we don't really need to.
I think that's a really good catch, Jill. That's the kind of wording we have to watch for all the time. And I'm really, you know, glad you pointed it out. However, in this case, I think the SAM reps are going to make sure it gets reconsidered. So I don't think it's not going to get reconsidered when this time comes up. But who knows what Half Moon Bay is going to do?
yeah. And if Half Moon Bay's appeal of their loss in the lawsuit fails, it has to be reconsidered, because, you know, the ERF will keep suing SAM for not doing what they said they would do in the ERF.
Right.
Would it be okay if we just sort of segue into one other part of the SAM report?
Can we not, Barbara? Let's finish this agenda item before we go to the SAM report.
Okay, that's fine. I move that we approve the SAM budget as presented.
Public comment, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Bill will remind me. So before we move on from the board, we only have a couple of members of the public, or maybe only, yeah, we have two. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Seeing none, go ahead, Barbara.
I'd like to move that we approve the SAM budget as presented tonight,
Along with our resolution, please.
along with our resolution. Yes, which needs to get to SAM immediately. If staff can do that as quickly as possible, that would be great.
Second.
Okay, Director Dye, seconded by Director Grant. Can we have roll call, please?
President Nancy Marsh,
Aye.
Vice President Jen Randall,
Yes.
Director Matthew Clark.
Aye.
Director Barbara Dye,
Aye.
and Director Jill Grant,
Yes.
5-0.
Okay, and if that's printed out tonight, I can sign it for you
Yeah,
tonight.
she will
Okay.
make sure it gets over.
Okay. Moving on, the engineers report. In the packet, anything you want to highlight, Chuck, or any?
No, that is just for information only. We have a lot of papers tonight. It takes me a while.
Big
Does anyone have any questions or comments on it?
No, I'm glad we have John Rayner helping with the review of some of the Montero enforcement main issues.
Yeah, John's really good technically and really good practically as well. So he's a good find.
Okay, no other questions or comments? Then we will, any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 7. Report on Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side meetings for information. Margaret and Matthew.
Matthew, I'll talk about finance committee if you want to go first and talk about other stuff. We mostly talked about budget.
Well, there won't be much other stuff. We've been wrangling over the budget for 3 months now, and and there was only one meeting last month instead of 2, and that was basically the only topic. So these were almost record short SAM meetings.
That's true. It was really great. But we had a finance committee meeting today to talk about the fact that SAM is using its reserves, its emergency reserves, to cover the shortfall from the storm, the New Year's Eve storm. So they had about $1.5 million in costs for that. The insurance companies have indicated that they will cover those costs. And FEMA has said that anything the insurance companies won't cover, they will cover. So that will get covered at some point. However, the question was, should they use the reserves to cover that shortfall? And in fact, they are almost exactly short in their reserves, which are required to be 1.25 million for an emergency reserve, and then they have to have 2 months of operating income as reserves. So they're down about $1.5 million in reserves. So it wasn't, I thought that they were going to ask us to come up with money to rebuild those reserves, but they did not. They wanted to make sure that the finance committee, and then I think they'll bring this to the SAM board, was comfortable with using the reserves to cover them. And the 3 of us on the finance committee agreed that we were, because it seems like that's what reserves are for. If we were to hand additional money over to SAM to bring the reserves up, then we'd have to get paid back somehow when that money came in. And if there is a real additional emergency at SAM, first of all, there's still another $1 million there as a reserve. And secondly, we're in a position we could have a special meeting and come up with funding if God forbid something else happened that required funding. So I just thought I'd mention that was the recommendation that's going to go to the board from the finance committee. But that's the situation. SAM is short of funds, cash flow right now, which is why they're really eager to get the check from us next Tuesday after the SAM board approves this new budget, and they can officially accept that money. So that's where we are on the finance committee.
They can come pick up the check if they want tomorrow instead of us putting it in the mail.
They
So,
feel that they can't take the check until after Monday night.
Yeah, that's kind of silly posturing. Like I said at the managers meeting, we're gonna send them the money. If the budget was delayed 1 month or 2 months, they have to keep their lights on. So I don't know why they're doing that, but it's drama.
Drama.
So if they can, if you can get the check to them to Tuesday, they're all geared up for that. So whether that makes sense or not, they seem to feel that that's the way it should be done. And so Monday night, we will approve this new budget and Sam will be ready to go again.
So one
And
of
then
it,
say one of
one of the SAM reps could pick up the check on Monday and just take it to the meeting.
yeah,
Either-
I'll do that. Yeah.
So,
The other thing is, we talked about actually trying to figure out a way to cover this issue that I keep raising about overruns or underspending in the capital improvements program at SAM and what happens to that money. And right now, if they underspend, if they don't complete a capital improvement project, they use that money to fund other stuff. And if they overspend, they use the reserves or cash flow to pay for it. So we're going to take a real look at that because we have to figure out a way to make these multi-year expensive projects, that there's a real financial oversight about how the money's being managed. So that's the other thing that's coming.
Great. You're doing really great work on the finance committee. We could tote up the amount of changes in the way that they track things and account for them that have happened since you joined the finance committee, that were just controls that didn't exist before. So thank you very much for how much attention you pay to it.
Gosh, thank you.
It's important. Somebody should. Any other questions about Sam? Any questions or comments from members of the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to arguably our most important item this evening. Yeah. We have a resolution, which I'm going to read. A resolution expressing gratitude and appreciation to Delia Comito for her years of service to the Granada Community Services District and its district residents. Whereas Delia Comito, Assistant General Manager of the Granada Community Services District, is retiring from her position on August 11th, 2023. And whereas the district wishes to recognize her 24 years of service to the district and the residents in the community. And whereas under Delia Comito's management, the district has consistently provided quality sewer service, solid waste and recycling collection services, and expanded the district's role as a community services district. And whereas Delia Comito has effectively worked within the community to provide exemplary customer service to district residents, all the while ensuring the district met state compliance requirements and fulfilled its governmental duties. And whereas Delia Comito has been a friend and ally to the residents of the coast side throughout her long tenure as Assistant General Manager. Now, therefore, be it resolved. This board does hereby recognize Delia Comito for her exemplary leadership and dedicated service to GCSD, coastside community, and does hereby express its sincere gratitude and appreciation of her in that regard, and wishes her all the best in her retirement.
Thank you.
And
I'd like
I just
to-
want
I'd
to,
like-
Something about the assessment district.
I'd like to make the motion to approve this resolution.
Was someone gonna say, I think, Chuck, were you gonna say something?
yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've worked with Delia for 20 of those years. I actually went up to Granada, I think the month after my youngest son was born. So we've worked together a long time and she's done a fantastic job over the years. And I think her greatest strength, and I work with a lot of government agencies, her greatest strength is she actually cares about the district, cares about ratepayer funds, and cares about the ratepayers themselves. And that's about the highest compliment I could say.
Did I say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we should have put something in there about the assessment district. Yeah.
Well, I actually gathered a little bit of information for my own curiosity, and I thought I'd share it with you. It's kind of interesting. But first, I really do appreciate your appreciation and gratitude. I hope it doesn't sound cliche, but it really has been an honor and a pleasure to serve the community. And it's been a real special privilege because I am a member of this community, and that makes it really special. And I do care. So the community has been really wonderful and very supportive. And I have to say that sometimes it can get really lonely working in a small office with just one other person. And there's been a lot of time, especially during COVID, where I was here by myself. And, you hear accolades of other employees and, they have Christmas parties, and these are things that we don't have here. And so my morale comes from the outpouring from the community who thanks us for the work that we do. For instance, the simplest thing, I could be just filling the pet waste stations with bags, and someone happens to walk by with their dog, and instead of just passing me, they actually stop and take the time to say thank you for doing what you're doing, and that makes it really all worthwhile. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure. So, and I would like to thank the board, and especially the SAM reps, for listening to all my complaints for so long. And thank Chuck for not being an overbearing boss. He's been really great to work with. I also want to thank Whitwer Park and working with Jonathan and Bill, and also John Rayner has been a pleasure to work with. He's our district engineer, and all the other contractors that I've worked with. And the nice thing about this being in this position is I've met a lot of people, I've worked with a lot of people that I wouldn't probably have otherwise got to know. And so it's been really, when you live in a small town, it's nice to know a lot of people. So I walk down the street and everybody's so that's been great. But anyway, so I put together some information. I was, like I said, I was curious for myself, but I do want to share it with you. My first meeting that I attended was in February of 2000. It was 6 months after I started, and it by coincidence was the same month that the new treatment plant expansion went online. But I was there to film because we used to do our own filming of the meetings in-house. We would borrow the camera equipment from Midcoast TV. This was before PCTV was here. And so I started out by going to the meetings to film them. But from that meeting until tonight, I actually, if I counted correctly, I've attended 298 board meetings.
Well, bless your heart.
I've also attended 25 park advisory committee meetings, and I've served under 19 different directors on the board. And, I want to mention this because Chris Porter was here for her retirement last month, and she mentioned Director Leonard Warren, who I worked with for most of the time. He left in 2018, and he today holds the record for the longest serving board member at 21 years. And our own Director Clark, if he continue, assuming that he's going to finish out his current term, which would be through November of next year, he will tie Director Warren for length of time on the board. So, and if any of you are wondering how they got 21 years as opposed to 20 with 4-year terms, it's because the district actually went from odd to even year elections. And so there was that one period where we got an extra year added in there. So anyways, I just thought that was an interesting caveat to mention. I have also issued 401 sewer permits. I've processed approximately 51 sewer permit variances, which are complicated. I've also processed approximately 58 assessment relief applications. I've installed 10 public trash cans. We only have 8 now. I've installed 8 pet waste stations, and we're down to 6 because the county took over one, and the one that was out at Surfers Beach got washed away when the new stairs got washed away with the last storm that we had. I did personally maintain those stations and hope it's agreed to continue. It's pretty fun. It gets you out of the office. You just get a little wrench and go in there, and we put the new signs and replace the lids and sometimes replace the actual dispensers and so forth. It's pretty easy. I've moved the district office twice, furnished it, I decorated it. I've participated in the First Flush program twice. I also served on the RCD Technical Advisory Committee when we initially started studying the bacteria problems in the harbor. So that was kind of interesting too, really interesting. So I was solely responsible for the assessment district again, I mentioned earlier, because of the timing. I think unfortunately I got stuck with it. So I actually was the only person who handled all the funds going through that complicated flow that Jerry Laster had set up for us through till, you know, the bonds have been paid off, and I think we'll get it set up and it'll be in good shape for Hope to carry forward. I also did the reconciliation that was necessary for the bond refinancing in 2003. Early on, I caught $1 million mistake that US Bank had made. It was a deposit mistake. And I also had caught a county error where they were overcharging us on assessment district fees that they were taking right out of the tax roll stuff. And that was like 57,000. Do you remember, Chuck? It was like 50.
I think it was like 125,000 actually. It was a lot.
Oh, I don't think it was that much, but we did get the money back. So I feel pretty good about those things. I think I can leave here with my head up high. I think you know, for a job that started from an ad, you know, answering an ad in the Half Moon Bay Review, you know, I think it's turned out pretty well for me. I also want to mention that when I started, there were no benefits here. So I've implemented CalPERS, otherwise you'd probably be stuck with me longer. I've implemented a health insurance, and which includes dental and all that stuff. And recently we also added the 457 plan. So we've done a lot of things over the years. Let's see, I know there's, I wanted to thank Tony Young at SAM, because he has been so great, and he is not only, I feel like he's a friend, but he's helped me so much throughout the district, whether it's cammering, TVing sewer lines, and helping me carry heavy things. He helped me get the barricades that we needed when we closed off the park property for during COVID, and so he's been very helpful. So I just wanted to put an extra shout out to thank Tony for all of his help. He's definitely gone above and beyond his call of duty to help us. I've worked with Hope for a really short period of time, but I can already tell she's just so sharp, and she asks all the right questions, and I feel super comfortable handing over my baton to her. She's going to do a great job. So I think you're all in good hands. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I don't know whether I should jump up and down and cry, but kind of nice, you know.
You may be back, Delia. So once we get into the assessment district.
For long though. So boundaries. Yes. I do want to ask that you please remember me, no matter where I am. I will provide you with my mailing address. If I do leave the area, I still want to be invited to the park opening. I would like to be there when you guys do the ribbon cutting for the park. So
Here.
okay, thank you.
Speaking of the park, and you mentioned the Parks Advisory Committee, Pat couldn't be here tonight, but I think between Pat and I, we had the majority of years of chairs of the Parks Advisory Committee. Yeah. So I just want to, on behalf of both of us, express our thanks to you for all the support that you gave to that committee in addition to your day job.
It was fun. We had fun.
We did. I see Fran's hand up, and I know she has worked with you for a long time as well. Fran, you go ahead.
Is she there?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, I just want to say congratulations to Delia. Yeah, she was on, let's see, got on in the year 2000, and you just got on there, right? You were just starting, and she really helped turn the district into a working district. We had lots of problems before Delia got on and or started working there and straighten things out. We used to meet in the pump house. That was where we were meeting and moving around a lot until we finally got into the building. So anyway, thank you for all you did and sticking it out all these years, 24 years. That's terrific. And wish you lots of luck. Congratulations, and hope all goes well on your move and your new life.
Thank you, Fran. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Fran. I see Barbara's hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say, same kind of thing. Thank you for all your hard work through the years and your expertise. And I wish you the best in the next phase of your life.
Thank you.
Enjoy your retirement. I enjoy mine very much. So I hope you have a wonderful time
Thank you.
exploring the world and being with family.
Hope so too. Thanks. Chuck's getting jealous, I think.
I was gonna make a joke, Delia, but it's your time, not mine. But I was like, well, I won't be enjoying that retirement for at least 5 years. The only good news is Bill will be 10, so.
Good, I'm
Yeah.
glad you're not retiring too.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Matthew, I think you wanted to make a motion.
In making this motion, this is a personal thank you to you, Delia. This is my 20th year here. You're the only person who ran the district that I've ever known. And at first I thought, well, it's a one-person thing and there's all this stuff going on. It can't be that hard, but it took not very long to appreciate all the things that you do and all the balls that you keep in the air all the time and how well you do it, and really to see that you do care. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So I would like to make the motion to pass this resolution of gratitude and appreciation to Delia Comito.
Second.
Director Clark. Motion, Director Randall seconded. You can probably add a few other seconds on there.
Okay.
Let's go do the roll call.
Okay, President Nancy Marsh.
Aye.
Vice President Jen Randall.
Aye.
Director Matthew Clark.
Aye.
Director Barbara Dye.
Aye.
And Director Jill Brandt.
Aye.
Thank you.
And that's if our new Assistant General Manager can have printed out on the really nice paper you use
Yeah.
with the seal.
Oh, I can do it. I can do it. She didn't show me what the paper was.
I'll come by tomorrow and sign it.
I have a learning curve ahead of her, but she's gonna do great. I just want to point out one thing too. If you notice, when you drive on Obispo Road, there's no pampas grass.
Mhm.
And I went out there for 2 years with my own clippers, from home, and I literally manually clipped off each frond on every single bush out there and put them in plastic bags, and I gradually dumped them in my own green waste can at home. And now there's no pampas out there, so I'm really happy. I think that helped a lot. So
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. I don't know too many people who get out there with their clippers out there. Good exercise though. To be honest. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah, sure.
I hate actually going on and doing anything after that, but we have.
That's okay.
This last one. Move on to the consent agenda, which includes June 15th, 2023 special and regular meeting minutes, July 2023 warrants, May 2023 financial statements, assessment district distribution number 1-23/24. Would anybody like to pull any of those items in the consent agenda? I think that's the public comments on that too. Seeing none. We have a motion to pass the consent agenda. And move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Randall and Clark. We have a roll call.
President Nancy Marsh,
Yes.
Vice President Jen Randall, Director Matthew Clark,
Aye.
Director Barbara Dye.
Aye.
Director Jill Brandt,
Yes.
and consent passes 5-0.
Okay, next item number 13, committee reports. Any committee reports? Seeing none. We'll move to the information calendar and we have an attorney's report,
No report, Madam Chair, President.
general manager's report,
Got nothing further.
administrative staff report.
One thing I just want to mention is we have a local recycling drop-off day this Saturday, where it normally is, from 8 a.m. until noon.
Okay. And future agenda items.
Wait.
I have
Up,
one.
up.
I'm sorry, Barbara, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the staff for handling the RVs and so forth that are parked in the lot. appreciate that they take the time to go down and put a notice on the windshield and talk to the sheriff so that we can keep people from deciding to move into the strip, which I think would be a bad thing. So
Actually,
thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Actually, there may be some future discussion about this. Bill, we need to figure out how we can authorize the sheriff's department to be able to cite people based on our ordinance. They do it for the city of Half Moon Bay, but I'm not really sure how we would go about,
We already did that. I thought we already did that, Bill.
Well, we have it in our ordinance code, but they don't, maybe we need to talk to the county, but I don't know how they are able to do that. I really don't know if we have to work it out with them or give them a
With the
copy.
sheriff's department.
Yeah, because I told them that I could give them a copy of our ordinance, but he still was kind of like, well, I don't really know, so I'm not really sure what's involved with something like that, but we might just need to have some discussions with them. But they've been really cooperative and they've gone over and knocked on the doors, but holiday weekends are really tough. You get a few of those big things out there and it's hard to get them to move on. So yeah, it would be helpful if we could start citing them if necessary. Hopefully this will be temporary until the park, gets under construction, but in the meantime, it would be nice if we knew how to implement our ordinance.
Thank you. Sure. Moving on, the future agenda items is the last thing. I would just like to add for a future agenda item to have a discussion about potentially changing the start time for our meetings to maybe 30 minutes earlier so that they don't run so late.
Yes.
And we don't wait so long. I know we have special meetings ahead of them, but we can talk about that and the implications of that and whether earlier works for people at a future meeting. Any other future agenda items? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Hey.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Congratulations, Delia, on your last meeting.
Thank you.
Yep, congratulations.
You might be seeing me around.
You can't
Oh, I know I will, but I wanted to put it on TV.
Yeah.